In the bustling city of Moscow, Oleg and Elena were on a perfect date. The two wandered through the night, enjoying every moment together. As dawn approached, something unimaginable happened elsewhere. In Paris, a passenger plane prepared for landing when all its lights suddenly went out. A chilling silence followed as everyone on board mysteriously lost consciousness. Before long, the same phenomenon spread across the globe, a sudden, unexplained blackout that seemed to erase life itself. Only a small region in Eastern Europe remained untouched, an area that would soon become known as the Circle of Life. Back in Moscow, Oleg and Elena noticed something strange. The drones hovering in the city's air froze mid-flight, suspended as if time itself had stopped. Worried, they hurried to the hotel lobby, where crowds gathered around a flickering television. The news anchor delivered grim news. This wasn't a natural disaster, nor a terrorist attack. Communications with the rest of the world had been severed. Moscow, it seemed, stood alone. In response, the government sent a recon mission to Kirov, one of the many cities swallowed by the blackout. Leading the mission was Mayor Dolmatov, joined by soldiers and a journalist named Olya, who hoped to uncover the truth. Drones had been sent before, but none returned. The stakes were high, and no one knew what they would find. The team arrived in Kirov and stepped into an eerie, lifeless world. Streets lay silent, buildings intact, as though frozen in time. Using specialized lights to navigate the darkness, they entered a nearby store. Inside, they made a chilling discovery. Every person was dead, not from violence, but from something invisible, something instant. Even the fish in a bowl lay lifeless. There were no signs of struggle, no explosions. It was as if life had simply vanished. Searching nearby apartments, they found the same scene. Dinners left uneaten, toys scattered on the floor, lives interrupted without warning. But then, something changed. A sudden attack broke the silence. A soldier was ambushed by a shadowy creature, fast and powerful. The others rushed to help, but the creature seized the soldier's weapon and fled. They fired their guns, but the bullets had no effect. The attacker disappeared into the night, leaving them shaken and one man badly injured. When they asked the wounded soldier what he had seen, he could only say that the darkness and chaos made it impossible to recognize anything. Days turned into weeks. A month later, the scale of the disaster became clear. Over 100 million Russians were presumed dead. Fear swept through the survivors. Religious groups filled the streets, proclaiming that the end of the world had come. Yura, a young man living with his ailing mother, received a letter. He was being drafted into the military. It broke his heart to leave her, but he knew he had no choice. The streets he passed on his way to the base looked apocalyptic. Buildings crumbling, cars abandoned, and silence haunting every corner. Moscow, though still powered, stood on the brink. At the military base, Yura joined Oleg's team. Mayor Dolmatov and Colonel Marina briefed them on the situation. The blackout zone stretched across the world, with only Moscow, Belarus, parts of Ukraine, and Finland retaining power. These areas, collectively called the Circle of Life, were humanity's last bastion. The cause of death in the dark zones was finally discovered: neurotoxins, chemicals produced by the human body itself, triggered by an unknown force. The soldiers had two critical tasks: gather resources from the quarantine zones to keep Moscow alive and search for clues to explain the neurotoxin's origin. But every mission was perilous. Most teams sent into the darkness never returned. As preparations continued, more volunteers arrived, and Oleg was shocked to see Elena among them. Before they could reunite, alarms blared through the base. An attack was imminent. Soldiers rushed to the border of the quarantine zone, weapons at the ready. Suddenly, the power went out. Dolmatov shot flares into the night sky, illuminating a terrifying sight: a massive wave of creatures advancing toward the base. The soldiers opened fire, but the beasts, undeterred, charged through. Chaos erupted. Oleg fought fiercely but was struck and lost consciousness. The next morning, Oleg awoke beneath the weight of a dead enemy. Yura spotted him and helped move the body. To their shock, the attackers weren't supernatural monsters. They were enormous, enraged bears. The cocaine bear is just a joke to these abominations. Dozens of bear corpses littered the battlefield. What could have caused such bizarre behavior? No one had answers. Oleg was taken to the infirmary where Elena, now a doctor, tended to his wounds. As she comforted him, their bond grew even stronger, but the mystery deepened. In the days that followed, Colonel Marina briefed Dolmatov on a disturbing new development: sensors. These were people who had mysteriously developed abilities after the blackout. They weren't superheroes, far from it. Sensors could receive data directly in their minds, like radio antennas picking up signals. But no one could understand the source or meaning of the data. The strongest of them, a man named Sasha, was kept in a military hospital. Since the blackout, he had been plagued by recurring nightmares. In his visions, he saw a bald man, faceless and ominous. Sasha was visited by Zhenya, a messenger sent by a mysterious figure named ID. Zhenya explained that the blackout had come in waves. The first wave destroyed all electronics, the second wave triggered the self-destruction of biological life, and the third wave, the deadliest of all, would soon begin. Those still alive in the quarantine zones would lose their free will and become unstoppable, mindless attackers. Millions would come, and humanity's survival would hang in the balance. But there was still time. Sasha wanted nothing to do with the strange visions plaguing him. When Zhenya appeared again, urging him to listen, Sasha panicked and called for security. The soldiers rushed in, but they couldn't see Zhenya. Thinking Sasha was hallucinating, the doctors sedated him. Meanwhile, the soldiers prepared for their dangerous mission. Yura found himself assigned to Group 7 alongside Olya, the journalist. As they traveled, Olya questioned Yura for her camera. To her surprise, Yura admitted he didn't mind this chaotic new world. It gave his life meaning. Something better than being a taxi driver. When Group 7 reached the quarantine zone, they were met with destruction. Destroyed tanks littered the roads. Buildings collapsed, and the air reeked of violence. It was clear. The third wave had already begun. Footage of the destruction spread like wildfire back in Moscow, triggering riots and panic. People believed their leaders were hiding something, and trust in the government crumbled. The soldiers split into smaller teams to cover more ground. Yura and Olya stuck with Group 7, and a subtle tension grew between them as they crossed the woods. Meanwhile, a recovered Oleg joined Team 4, which investigated a small town. During the search, a soldier accidentally triggered a storage room collapse, injuring his leg. The team decided to rest in a house until medical help arrived. The next morning, Elena showed up as the medic and announced the soldier needed to return to Moscow or risk losing his leg. Elsewhere, Group 7 spent the night in an apartment. As they ate breakfast, Yura noticed something odd about a nearby store. Reviewing Olya's footage, he realized the store doors had been closed when they first arrived. Suspicious, Yura led a few soldiers into the store. They found signs of someone's recent presence and set traps before returning to the apartment to wait. Night fell, and just as they prepared to leave, Yura asked Olya to stay behind. He taught her to use flares for help if they didn't return. But Olya disobeyed, following the group with her camera. Inside the store, they found a wounded teenager who had triggered the traps. Trying to help him, the soldiers were caught off guard when the boy grabbed a knife and killed one of them. Reacting instantly, the others shot him down. The brutal scene left Olya shaken. Back in Moscow, Sasha wandered to the hospital rooftop for fresh air. He froze when ID, the mysterious figure Zhenya had mentioned, appeared before him. Unlike Zhenya, ID was physically present. Soldiers soon arrived, led by Marina, but ID manipulated their minds, making them see Marina as the enemy. He explained he wasn't human and revealed terrifying truths. Millions like him were coming to end humanity. When Marina asked what he was, ID simply said, "Humans would consider me a god." ID later explained to Marina that the blackout and the circle of life was caused by a mistake. His race had initiated a radiation process, but the moon accidentally shielded Eastern Europe, sparing it. Humanity, he revealed, was never native to Earth. Thousands of years ago, humans were bioweapons sent by ID's people to destroy Earth's original inhabitants, a highly advanced species that had built the pyramids and underwater cities. Humans shared DNA with ID's kind, but lacked psychic abilities, which some, like Sasha, were now regaining due to radiation exposure. An alien army was arriving soon, led by ID's brother, RA. ID wanted to stop him, but Sasha's visions held the key to RA's location. Suddenly, the quarantine zone erupted in chaos. Waves of mind-controlled humans attacked the scattered teams. Yura's group was overwhelmed. They fought desperately, running out of ammo as countless enemies stormed their position. When the apartment they were hiding in exploded, Yura begged Olya to shoot the flare for help, but dozens of teams were doing the same, and resources were stretched too thin. Group 7 climbed onto a rooftop to stay out of reach. Meanwhile, ID flew with Marina, Sasha, and Zhenya to the military base. ID used Sasha's visions to pinpoint RA's location, a skyscraper in Kirov. Dolmatov hesitated to trust ID, especially when Moscow itself came under attack. Marina convinced him ID was their only chance. Back in the quarantine zone, Group 7 climbed down the building, searching for teams that hadn't sent flares. Olya hesitated, terrified, but Yura kissed her to calm her down. Together they moved through the destroyed streets, spotting civilians Yura shot first, reminding Olya of the deadly teenager. Just then, another wave of drones attacked. All of Group 7's soldiers died, leaving Yura and Olya wounded but alive. They hid in a garage, patched Yura's injuries, and found a car to escape. At the base, Sasha refused to leave, terrified that RA had seen him in a vision. Moments later, rockets struck the base, destroying it. ID admitted he had foreseen this but claimed Sasha's absence saved the mission. The next morning, Yura and Olya found Oleg and Elena. Their teams were decimated, and supplies were gone. Fortunately, Dolmatov's forces arrived, and they all joined the mission to confront RA. With no base left to return to, Olya and Elena had no choice but to come along. Hours later, the team arrived in Kirov. The streets were eerily silent, blocked by hordes of drones. RA believed ID had died in the base explosion, which bought them time. As tanks pushed forward, crushing enemies, ID led Yura and a few soldiers to the skyscraper's rooftop, while Oleg stayed below, defending civilians. On the rooftop, RA appeared, effortlessly knocking Yura aside. ID fought him, matching RA blow for blow. When a massive explosion distracted RA, ID seized the moment, ripping a device from his brother's body. Yura grabbed a grenade, shoving it into RA's chest and finally killing him. With RA gone, ID released all mind-controlled humans, but the fight wasn't over. ID revealed that a massive alien spaceship was arriving to colonize Earth. Zhenya, furious, attacked ID, but ID used his powers to make Zhenya kill Marina. Yura defended ID, arguing he was their only hope. The tension broke into a brutal fight between Yura and Oleg. Desperate, Olya shot Yura to stop him. At that moment, Zhenya found the real ID and tackled him off the rooftop. Both died on impact. The spaceship landed, massive and foreboding. Inside, Oleg, Olya, and Elena discovered rows of alien pods. When Oleg triggered the device ID had taken from RA, oxygen began flowing, preparing the aliens to wake. Desperate, they started destroying the pipes carrying oxygen, killing the aliens in droves. Finally, they reached the last pipe. Elena froze, realizing these pods held alien children. The trio hesitated as the children stared back at them, innocent and silent, leaving humanity's next choice hanging in the air. And your next choice could be one of these recommendations on the right. Subscribe and drop a like to return for future recaps. Grab your popcorn, enjoy yourself, and see you soon, my friend.